It's Platt, and today we continue the Oktoberfest vibe. That's next with Platt's Beer of the Week. So the particular beer we have today is the Festbier. It comes to us from the fine folks at Bitburger. A Festbier is kind of the same theme as a Mars and Oktoberfest, style of beer. Perfect for this time of year. A little background to Bitburger. Bitburger's flagship beer is the third best-selling beer in Germany and the #1 beer on draft in Germany. So this is one of the big players in the German beer market. In 1817, the brewery was founded by a gentleman named Johann Wallenborn in Bitburg, Germany. Apparently, Johann's father was a brewer too, so he just kind of kept it in the family. Speaking of keeping the family, in 1842, a gentleman named Ludwig Simon, the son-in-law of Johann, took over the brewery. Johann passed away in 1839, took a couple years to wrap up the business, but he eventually took over the brewery and for a while changed the name to Simon Brau. Eventually the brewery's name was changed to Bitburger, in a connection to the city of Bitburg. In 1877, production finally reached 1,000 hectoliters a year. Doesn't sound like a lot, but we have to remember that's 150 years ago. Technology and times have definitely changed, and considering they were probably just selling kind of in a local market there in Bitburg, 1,000 hectoliters was still a good bit of work there. In 1880, they began bottling this beer, and that helped them open up some other markets and stuff. Back then, draft beer was unpasteurized, kind of had a short shelf life, so the bottling allowed for greater distributions. One of the real big breakthroughs came in 1883 when the grandson of Johann, Thibault Simon, started brewing a Pilsner style beer, the first that they produced. It was becoming a hot style of beer. Originally started as a Czech Pilsner, but kind of took over Germany at the time. And that year was their first release of the Pilsner style that eventually became their flagship beer. In 1886, due to the expanded distribution, however, they began exporting for the first time. They exported to the major beer market of Luxembourg. From the little acorn grows a mighty oak, I guess. In 1891, they reached 10,000 barrels or hectoliters a year in production. Over a 14-year period to 10x your production is kind of good, and I guarantee there's a lot of breweries here in the state that would take that kind of growth. Excuse me. In 1909, they began their first marketing campaign, and it was to support that Pilsner beer that had really taken off and become their flagship. So they decided to start putting marketing dollars behind it. The next year in 1910, they purchased their first refrigerated rail car. Now in Germany, that was a little more of a luxury than necessity. They had been doing that here in the States for probably about 20, 30 years now, especially Anheuser-Busch was the first one to do it here. A little warmer climate. Also, the American palate enjoyed beer at a little colder temperature. So again, it was more of a necessity here, more of a luxury there, but they did purchase their first refrigerated rail cart in 1910. 1920, they opened the first laboratory for the beer for things like yeast propagation, checking pH mash, stuff like that. If you really think about the period of time from like the 20 years leading of this, from the turn of the century till then, we got the car, we got the movie, we got the plane. Science was really exploding, and it finally came to the brewing industry at the time. Lastly, in 1949, they reopened the brewery after World War II. Apparently, at the end of World War II, Bitburg, Germany, was pretty much flat, and it took a few years to rebuild, but in 1949, they reopened the brewery. Last little tidbit for you IndyCar, kart, Formula One fans. Bitburger sponsored the great Michael Schumacher in the 94 and 95 seasons. For those of you that may not know who I'm talking about, Michael Schumacher at one time was probably the Michael Jordan of auto racing. He was always up there on Forbes' list as far as highest paid athletes, most endorsements, what have you, and Bitburger was a sponsor. Real quick, let's talk about some of their other beers. They have a pretty small line. They only have 5 beers in the line. Of course, the Festbier we're talking about today. They have, of course, their flagship beer, the Pilsner, 4.8% ABV. Again, a classic German style, and their most popular beer by far. Also, it comes in these little mini kegs like I have the Warsteiner there. You've probably seen that at your local liquor store. They were one of the first breweries to do that. Next is, and I'm afraid I'm going to butcher that, that's why I need the glasses, is a Radler Not True Trub. I'm pretty sure I butchered that. Basically what a Radler is a German take on a shandy. This one's 1.9% ABV. This is a blend of their Pilsner and Lemonade. I think a 60-40 blend. Great little session drink though, great summertime drink. Next is Bitburger Dry Hop, 4.9% ABV. This is a collaboration with Duchette's Brewing here in the U.S. The particular style they produce is a killer beer, which is a kind of unfiltered, unpasteurized, cloudy lager that's a little hoppier than a standard kind of easy drinking German light lager. This particular one, Bitburger, has their own proprietary hops strain that they grow, and they brought in, Duchette's brought in a couple of West Coast classic style hops. They put them together to produce this beer. Sounds very interesting. And lastly is Bitburger 0.0. They're non-alcoholic brew. Most of the major breweries now have this, so it's just their line. But that's it. No Dunkels, no Dunkelweisens, Hefeweizens, Bocks, Doppelbocks. 5 beers and that's it. They just focus on that. Well, before we try this beer, though, let's check out the stats. So real quick today, I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about the German beer market. Doing research for this video, I ran across something that I found very interesting. A lot of the country's beer markets are generally dominated by 1 or 2 big players. Here in the U.S., it's either the Monster AB InBev or the Coors, Miller Coors, Molson conglomerate, and those are 2 big players. Our neighbor to the south of Mexico has Grupo Modelo and Moctezuma, and all their major beer brands kind of fall underneath there. Up north, there's Molson, which is Molson Coors, whatever, and then you have Labatt's, whatever, and those are the 2 big brands there. Germany's a little more segmented than that. There's 5 of the bigger ones. There's Kronbacher, Beck's, Warsteiner, Veltins, and Bitburger. And those are the 5 biggest breweries here, and they make up about a third, maybe slightly more of the German beer market. Then about another third is kind of the outsider brands, your AB InBev, but also Carlsberg, Heineken, some of the big international groups. And then the middle third is some of the smaller German brands. But there's not someone, like Grupo Modelo. I think at one point them and Moctezuma had like 60-something% of the 60 or 70% of the Mexican beer market. You have nothing like that in Germany. Everybody's got, although the big 5, everybody's got like 7 or 8 or 6 or 11%. Nothing that huge. And I think part of it is just culturally, a lot of these brands have been around forever and ever and ever, so they've already kind of entrenched there. Also, because of the German beer purity laws, there's not much of a craft beer scene because you just can't play around with ingredients and still call it beer. So, but I found that very interesting in that the traditional brands have found their little niche in the German beer market, and they're holding on to it. And that, again, there's not just one alpha dog there. Probably makes distribution kind of nice too, because you're not battling that alpha dog to get on a shelf or this, that, and the other. Just found that interesting. If you got a different opinion or a little bit different, feel free to leave a comment down below. Well, enough about that. Let's drink a fest beer. All right. Nice little copper color to it, typical of that kind of Mars and Oktoberfest style. I poured a little more aggressive today, but we got a nice, little more than a finger of light khaki head. All right, a little bit of malt, not a ton there. Let's give her a try. Oh, that's nice. A little more pop than like the Breckenridge one I recently tried. You're not getting hop aroma, but just a hint of hop bitterness. I think a little more on the back. It's a little more well balanced, even though there's plenty of malt sweetness up front. Compared to the Breckenridge, I think a touch more body to it. Slightly lighter color as I'm looking at it now. Kind of, I think, more traditionally what you would think in a German beer. I think if you drank this compared to the American interpretation of some of these beers, I think it's just going to come out as this is more of a traditional style German fest beer. Yeah, not a bad little drinker there. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Until next time, bottoms up.